You know, and we all have our 15 minutes of fame, and I'd like to take a couple of my 15 minutes to talk about the rights and the wrongs in the world of professional wrestling.
And WWE Championship.
This match is for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship.
The World Heavyweight Championship.
The match.
We appreciate you guys coming out and taking your time to support women's wrestling in America.
This match is for the AWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling Podcast. This is your host, Mr. Green. How are you? And hope everyone is well. Unfortunately, we know there's some horrendous things that's going on, you know, across the world, specifically in Los Angeles as I'm recording this. It's been a tough ride for him at this point. I can tell you, just being at the job, for those that listen to this regularly, you know what, I'm in somewhat of a media center. And the day that when my coworkers had them call and they cut in on the KCAL feed, and KCBS, they stayed on these fires for hours, as they should. I'm not saying that they should have gone back, but I knew that it was something big when they not just cut in, because they cut in for a lot of things. They cut in for car chases on KCAL's TV. But when they cut into the primetime feed, the money on CBS, and they kept it on that throughout primetime and their late night shows, that's when I knew, okay, this is some serious stuff going down. But all of that to say that hopefully, if you are out there and you're safe, and I mean, I know there's really no words that could make good for anyone that had to go through any sort of tragedy there. People like me, all we can do is either support, you know, make maybe a donation or hope for the best in this situation. And right now, we're hoping for the best. The donation's been sent. So I will end that by saying, you may out there listening, if you have people or you know somebody, or you're just feeling, you know, like you want to contribute, there are a number of them that's out to help people who've lost their homes and so on and so forth. But, you know, I'm not going to go too far in that. I know that's not what you're tuning in for. I just wanted to say it real quick before we move on. So, all right, now back to the show. And back to me saying thank you for tuning in to the show. And listening to me go on about the reviews of WoW and their episodes. We are closing in on them determining a new champion. Thank goodness. They've been carrying on with that show without a champion for, what are we in now? I guess for 4 months. I think it was somewhere around there. They didn't have it going into the new year. And yeah, I want to say about October or so. This is the last time you might have seen the championship, but the championship wasn't defended. So, yeah, I'm really happy that this is finally about to occur, because my God, it just felt like it was starting to drag at some points. I mean, it was fine, and I know they were building towards this big moment, and I hope that it lives up to the hype. I hope it lives up to whatever it is that the expectations were or are for them doing this or airing it, because it's already happened. So anyhow, let us move forward. And we can get to that, but before we do, you know, we have to go through the news, views, and updates. And what is going on in the world of women's wrestling right now? Well, the thing that I wanted to talk about that's going on there was somewhat shocking to me. I'm not disappointed, but it's somewhat shocking to me that Jordynne Grace is actually still, at least for the moment, in TNA Wrestling. I had talked about Tessa Blanchard coming to attack her to, week 1, and then we talked about Blanchard attacking Grace again the following week and then throwing her out of the building, which was very reminiscent of the old Bobby Heenan tossed out of Monday Night Raw, and that was the time that he was gone and disappeared for a couple of months before he showed up in WCW. It was his write-off. And if reports were to be believed, Grace had, again, reportedly, not wanted to work with Blanchard. But maybe she is going into professional mode. I mean, she's seemed like she's been professional there, and I'm sure she likely feels like, TNA Wrestling has done a lot for her, so maybe she should return that. I am curious, though, as to whether this will be the launch off of a feud or whether it will be a one and done. I'm sure that I will look at it eventually. Like I said, some people know that I do have, or I still have TNA Plus. Now, the only downside, and I'm not advertising the service, but the only downside is that when they have a pay-per-view like what's coming up, and their match is going to take place at Genesis, by the way. That's January 19th. The only downside to their streaming service, in the grand scheme of it, is like you're not going to get the pay-per-views when the pay-per-view airs. You will get it, but there's a little bit of a turnaround. So as long as you're willing to wait 2 weeks or so to see it, and if it's not time sensitive that you watch it right then and right there, then it's certainly worth it. But if you're trying to just catch the pay-per-views and things along those lines, it's not called Fight anymore. What is it now? It's Triller. Yeah, I think so. So yeah, it is going to be there. That's where a lot of those wrestling pay-per-views land. Actually, I need to look at my account. I haven't been on there in months. And of course, there's traditional pay-per-view. So I can only expect for Blanchard to go over in this match. Now, I could be wrong. And that's the interesting part about this, is what makes me want to see it. Is like, okay, are they going to put Blanchard right back into the position of winning and have her go over on what was their basically top knockout for the last year, somewhere along those lines? Or will they let Jordan just beat her and then leave if she's leaving? I mean, stranger things have happened. My gut tells me that it would be Blanchard, but I cannot truthfully say that it wouldn't surprise me if Jordan Grace won. If I'm going to play the percentages, let's just say I give it a 70-30 split that Blanchard goes over. That is where I am with that at this moment. That should be an interesting match. The Knockouts Championship, which is currently held by Masha Slamovich, will be defended against Rosemary. And they've set this up for a Clockwork Orange House of Fun, which was Raven's creation. I am definitely going with Slamovich on that. Nothing against Rosemary. I think she's done fine, but I believe at this point she's probably there to kind of facilitate an additional win for Slamovich before she goes on to whomever is her next challenge. And of course, as far as the other championships are concerned, other championships in TNA being the Knockouts Tag Team Championships, well, you got Spitfire with Jody Threat and Danny Luna taking on Ash and Heather by Elegance. I honestly don't know. I would want Spitfire to retain, but I am somewhat surprised that Ash has not won something yet. I mean, because that the normal feeling amongst most wrestling is that if you came from the WWE, you're going to walk into it and be featured pretty prominently and or win a championship immediately. But there's always, I shouldn't say always, there's almost no way to make everybody happy with that. Because when they do come in with that kind of fanfare and they don't get it, they feel cheated. And they come in and then they just walk into a title match, it's like it's unfair. So, take it with a grain of salt. It is what it is. There are reports going on right now that Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair probably will be returning, and I guess in the somewhat near future. That is basically bandied about now because their names pop back up on the active roster again. And it's been listed that, they've been out for months. Flair has been out for, it's been well over a year. December 2023, she's been gone. So we've eclipsed a year with her. And Becky Lynch has been out since May 2024. So she's a little less, but still has been a lengthy amount of time. But I'm not going to say that we don't miss them. But, that women's division has been cooking lately. It has been just moving along. Even going up to the Netflix special, it seems like they've blown off the match with, well, I said not the match, the feud with Ripley and Morgan. I don't see where else they could go with it. So Ripley's got to find another dragon to slay, so to speak. And Tiffy has gotten the championship off of Nia Jax by cashing in. And speaking of changes, Julia has won the NXT Women's Championship. You would not want to believe that it was some sort of foregone conclusion that she was going to do that, and, at some point in time, but there was or is some merit to that with the amount of fanfare that her and Vakor came in with. And Vakor won the number one contendership for the NXT North American Championship. It does make me wonder, will Julia and Vakor cross paths champion to champion at some point? One half of that equation is already set if that's the direction that they wanted to go. Julia's got the championship, unseating Roxanne Perez, who had held on to the championship for a fairly long period of time, and had one of the better promos when they were pushing her as this prodigy, which I think she actually used that as her nickname on the Indies, if I'm not mistaken. I wish I could remember how far back it was, but she sat down and cut this promo about her being in the business, starting in there young, doing this, doing that, accomplishing more in her young age, because I don't think she's all that old. I'm not sure she's over 25, and she's been wrestling for a while, and I love that she would put in things that people knew to be true, which is, some of my complaints with WoW, but we'll get to that. So in any case, Perez has dropped the title. Julia's the new champion. Vakor is going into the number one contendership for the North American Women's Championship. So they got a lot of stuff that's moving along on that particular brand as well. And lastly, maybe not lastly, Alexa Bliss is also listed as being soon to return to the WWE. I really wonder what they're going to do with her at this point, because I almost felt like when you had a Liv Morgan there who somewhat occupied the spot of the mean girl that Alexa Bliss had created, the 5 Feet of Fury, because I honestly cannot see her jumping into being the Fiend. Now that doesn't mean they won't do it again, but the Wyatt Six has lost momentum, and Bray's no longer with us, so I don't know if that would be the best thing. Now, here's the last one that I wanted to bring up. Chelsea Green, the new Women's United States Champion, has apparently made it known that she wants to be known as the Diva Killer and wants to hold open challenges for divas. And that is the way that is listed. It's the divas, not the women's roster, the divas. Back in the day, those. Apparently she gave an interview, and Here's what she said. This is what they pulled out as related to that. Of course, I mean, I would love to be the Diva Killer. I mean, I would love an open challenge, Divas only. The Diva Killer. I'll invite Maurice. I already put it out there into the universe. I will invite Nikki. I will invite Bree. I will invite any diva that wants to come and attempt to take my beautiful shiny piece of jewelry away from me. Well, I cannot say that I dislike the the sentiment, and this particular interview took place. What is it? I hope I'm saying this dude's name right. Witty Whiter. That is all one word. But if you pull up Chelsea Green interview 2025, you'll find it. I'm actually surprised that interview hadn't got much more traction in this, but it's maybe it's still got to go. So as I'm talking about this, it's only been uploaded, pretty recently. But anyhow, so she is one to take on any divas, and like I said, I think that it would be a interesting concept. Although the pitch that I had around the divas thing, this was like 3 or 4 years ago. Whenever Eva Marie was there last, is what made me think about it. I almost pitched it in reverse of what she's doing, because she is wanting to be, I guess, the heel champion that's going to invite the divas in to come challenge for her United States Championship. I don't know whether she's trying to put them over, make them look bigger, or whatever the case may be. I think that it might be hard for them to get the divas over unless there's some growing bit of nostalgia that people have for the divas division all of a sudden, which would be kind of weird. But the whole thing in reverse, because also it's been written that Chelsea Green has been advocating to get the Divas Championship belt back. That's one of those moments where I said, depending on the audience and the crowd, you could probably get some good heat with that. Meaning the reverse angle that I was talking about with, like, take a diva. In this case, I'll say Eva Marie because that was who made me think of it in the first place. Take a diva and have her talk about how much better the women's division was when they were all labeled diva, how much better the Butterfly Divas belt was than anything that they had, how much more talent those ladies had opposed to now, which would be all things that the fans would, especially the ones that are hardcore into it, they would never agree to. And you just have her declare herself the Divas champion and walk around with a worthless belt. And get some mileage off of that until they can, get somebody to take it off of her. Now, the only problem with having somebody like Eva Marie is that the matches would suck. That would be the downside of using her in there. It'll get some hate, but the matches wouldn't be good. So you would probably have to lean in on a lot of promos, a lot of interviews, and a lot of smoke and mirrors within the match in and of itself. But that's where, we are with that. It could be interesting, and I'll keep my eyes open for it just to see where exactly Miss Green, no relation, is going with her Divas Challenge. So now that being said, we got that out of the way. Let us move towards getting ready to do this review, because it is quite the interesting show. Not a bad episode, but it's a interesting episode. We'll jump into that, and whether it was good setting up the next episode, which is supposed to be their big episode. I guess it'd be like the equivalent of, maybe not a pay-per-view, but a premium event, possibly. I don't know. So we'll take a quick check into that. But first, we hit the break, and then on the other side is into the review. Stay tuned. All right, folks. Here we are. It is review time. Time to go through our wonderful episode of WoW. And the opening slate for this episode is WoW episode 317. The title, Three's a Crowd. The air date, January 4th. And the chronological number is 121. Now that we've set the table, let us go through what this show had to offer for us. It began with the commentators opening up the show, and then Abilene Maverick interrupts their little banner back and forth. When Maverick enters, David says, and I'm fast forwarding this, but he basically says that she can't wrestle because she comes out to address the open spot in the battle royal. But of course, David gets up and is like, well, you can't wrestle because you're hurt. And then Maverick goes on and she says that she's introducing her co-VIP. Now, to condense this is basically the result of the old I've searched far and wide, storyline or angle. It used to be something that happened all the time. I went out looking for somebody that could be, in my shoes or be my next client or whichever way that you put it, depending on whether it was a manager or a wrestler that was looking for a proxy. In this case, it's the wrestler's looking for a proxy, and we're going to get somebody to fill my shoes. The proxy that is chosen in this particular case, I think, on the show, I believe this is Paola Mayfield. I've been saying Paola, so let me make sure I say it right. Is one of them. So I was, for the benefit of this, I'm just going to stick with Paola. Whether I'm right or wrong, that's what's going to be pronounced right now. So Paola comes out after she's introduced by Abilene Maverick. She gets the bit of a star treatment by Maverick, talking her up. But it did not get the big star treatment that she probably should have had. Does that make sense? Like she got it from Maverick bringing it all up and co-VIP and this, that, and the other. But the way that WoW kind of presented her in that press release, you would think that she would have gotten more. Especially considering that because of the press release, it felt like they knew that she was coming. And I'm not sure whether it's a case of, are we supposed to go with WoW not knowing or the commentators not knowing? Or did they know and they just not know that she was there? I was like that part, and I'm probably overthinking it, but that part right there just kind of boggled me. I was like, oh, now, wait a minute. Didn't the company released a press release on her? So why would they not be aware that she's coming? So I don't know. There are times when I'm not sure whether WoW wants me to treat the show, whether it's happening real time, and I don't mean real as in like second by second, but I mean we are supposed to address these weeks as these weeks are actually going down, opposed to we all know that this was taped and it's just being rolled out week in and week out from the editing team. But in any case, getting back to the point, they talked up a big game about her. They brought up, she did this, she done that, blah, 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 blah. But I would venture to say, and this I cannot prove, but I would venture to say that there might not be a lot of crossover with those audiences. Despite the fact that she was on reality TV and she was featured on TMZ and, whatever other things that they've said that she's done. And those are, very good points to position her as the celebrity wrestler. But we didn't see it. It's the same song and dance. We didn't see any of it. this is one of those points where I was like, it would really be nice if you got some photos from TMZ that you can license out and put on the air. It would have been nice if they had gotten some clips of her in action on the reality show. Like, just a little clip of seeing her there. It'd have been nice if they had gotten clips of her on the indies from some other wrestling promotion, just to show that she didn't just walk off a reality TV set and then walk into a wrestling ring. I do believe that those things matter. Now, that's just me, but I believe that those things matter because they're trying to set her up to be a large persona. But the way that it came off to me, it's like they being the commentators, Nigel Zane and Dave McClain, tried to make her sound like a huge deal. But I didn't feel like she was a huge deal because there was nothing else to relate that. The only thing that we got is their words, which we get from everybody. The only thing we got about her is the explanation for the commentators, which we get for everybody. Nothing here made her feel any different or any more special than anybody else that's on that roster. Again, I'm sure that she has her fan base and, people have seen her on television. I mean, and when I say television, I mean her previous lines of work in the reality TV field. But I unless there was some licensing complication, I cannot imagine any good reason for them not to have had her set up or a video package or something that would show her to be the star that she's purported to be, that she's supposed to be. And never mind the fact that when she comes out, there's an opening video with her and Abilene Maverick together. Like when you go and you see, she's already got a video playing on their screens when she walks through. She already got music made, and she's already got the little videos that they do when they're in the studio to edit into the entrance. That's already been done. So again, it kind of violates the idea that neither David McClain nor Nigel Zane knew anything about it, because I'm sure that Abilene Maverick does not just walk into the studio, sneak in, be like, all right, let's just shoot this and then leave, and then give it to the production truck so they can put it in when they're done. Now, McClain tried to justify how she got this music played and all that stuff, like, oh, you bribed the production truck. I'm going to have to talk to him about that. I mean, at least there was the effort. I'll give it that much. At least there was the effort. There was the effort to try and justify why she was there. But like I said, for me, when I see that, it doesn't come off like a surprise. It comes off like a produced piece. Like I said, she's in the studio. She's standing right next to her. She's, they're doing heart signs together. They're dressed for this. She's in her gear already. So yeah, it came off to me like, this was a produced piece. There's no way on earth that they could have not known. So if the effort was to try and make it feel spontaneous, or the effort was to try to make her come off like, oh wow, we didn't know she was here, I don't think they did a good job of that. Like, I can even buy if they just played the music and put her name on the screen. I could buy either one of those because it's not like it's difficult. If we're going off the theory that Abilene Maverick paid off the production truck, which would be ridiculous, but if we're going off of the theory of that, those two things I can buy. The studio shoot was a hill too far, just for me. So, moving forward. Oh, yeah. So we're going to go to the next segment. Sorry. The next segment is the opening match. This follows Mayfield being introduced as the Columbian GOAT. And now she is slotting herself to go after the last slot of the Battle Royal for the Wild Championship. And what McLean decides is that she'll get a chance to compete, but you're gonna have to go against Ashley Blaze. And he talks that up like it is a big thing, like it means something. And, all due respect to Ashley Blaze, but she has not been presented like a big star, a big deal, or even a winner in that company. So I don't know what kind of reaction I was supposed to have off of this. It didn't feel like it had any oomph behind it. It was like, Ashley Blaze, everybody. Now, of course, the video, the show had a lot of excitement to it. I could not get excited for that because the second I heard her name, I was like, all right, she's losing. We know where this is going. And I did skip one other thing. So let's rewind just for a second because this is also important. This is probably a lot of the reason that Maverick is with Paola to begin with, because when she comes down to ringside after being announced by Abilene and McLean talking about you're hurt and she's taking a spot, etc., Maverick gives Mayfield the mic. And she does a small promo. I'm not going to say anything about the promo. I'm just going to say this. Clearly, and this is not a knock, but clearly English is not her first language, so there's some rough water there. And when she's talking. So she's probably not going to get herself over. I mean, if you could in that company to begin with, but assuming that you got mic time and stuff like that, she's not going to be able to do that. She's not in a position that she can deliver the goods on the mic. Abilene Maverick, that's where she comes in. She can deliver the goods on the mic, and I will say this, and I mean this in the nicest possible way. She's annoying as shit on the microphones. Now, again, I am saying that with the utmost reverence. I don't mean it to like, I can't say. I mean it to say she does her over the top, heel, whiny persona, whatever you want to label that into or as. She does that very well. And it can be annoying if you're listening to her talk for lengthy periods of time. So, in that tone. So I wouldn't push for her to keep doing it, but she does need to be the one that is doing the talking between the two of them because she can at least get it over. So now, back to where we were. She gets on the microphone. She being Paola, she's, does the I guess the normal thing and like, I'm going to win the belt. That's when David is like, well, you're going to have to go through Ashley Blaze. And within seconds, Ashley Blaze is right there at the ramp ready to go. I was like, oh, come on. Now they tried to justify that too. You didn't even see her walk out. I mean, she was already standing there. Just like, what is she doing? Just lingering by the open walkway until somebody calls her name. This is allegedly supposed to be a match that's made on the fly. This is at the spur of the moment. That's what this is supposed to be. And she is just there. Boom. Out of, the second David says it. They don't even pretend like this was some sort of random or spur of the moment decision. She's there and ready to go. Now, they tried to explain it. They said something about, well, she was there to get her second chance, because you never know, some nonsense. I like some of that. I'll be honest with you. I started tuning it out because I was like, God damn, this is so ridiculous. Here we are again with somebody else who had already gone in, already lost, but now they're getting a second chance when you have other people on the roster who hadn't been in there at all. And if it's just a matter of somebody going in there to beat a body, to go take the pin, then it does. Why do you need to recycle somebody? Just get somebody else to go in there and do the job and then move on. That part annoyed me because they keep doing it. And it's not like the match is bad. I didn't like the finish, But I'll get to that. But they keep doing this, and they've done this over the course of years now. I've said it in one of the previous podcasts. I'll say it now. There's not been a single tournament, qualifying rounds, or anything of that nature where they have multiple people that, allegedly you're bracketed against one person or the other. They have never done that without having to recycle somebody, regardless of how many people they had on their roster. Somebody else always gets back in, whether that be they get a different tag partner or they just blatantly put back in it altogether. It always happens. And it just feels like, did you put any effort in it? And I understand. You're trying to orchestrate, keep together, and keep a linear train of thought / booking for over a year inside of 4 weeks and probably 3 to 4 days in the week, every week for a month. And it might have been more than that. But the point being here is that you got somebody else. I know it's difficult. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's easy, but you have somebody else. Just use somebody else. Why is that so hard? So anyway, Blaze comes out, and she's coming out as arrogant as she has ever been, which is why I lean into, she's probably miscast. Yeah, she's a baby face here, but sometimes her mannerisms and whatnot lean more towards the self-centered, arrogant heel. And the way she blows kisses to the audience, how she looks at her opponents, etc., etc. But there was no doubt in my mind at all who was going over here. I was like, there's no way that Blaze is winning. So when she comes out, and of course we know what has to happen past that. If Abilene Maverick is at ringside, she has to go sit next to David. And that's exactly what she did. As is WOW standard and is mandatory. If you're a heel and you're a manager and your person's out there, well, you got to go sit next to him because, you got nothing better to do. You can't. It's not like you need to go managing your client or your friend or whatever. So back to Mayfield. I just want to reiterate, I really, really, really wish they had done a different job in trying to make her look like the star, get some footage of her. I mean, I know WOW probably doesn't want to acknowledge any other wrestling company exists, but get some footage of her in action from that, get some pictures, get some footage of the reality show, something, just to separate her from the pack. Because she could be good. We don't know that, but I know that she has wrestling experience beyond WOW. So she could be something that could be worked on and made into a star for the show, but I doubt that'll ever happen. I really do. So the match kicks off, and I like how they start this thing up. They had a lockup. Mayfield and Blaze had a lockup, and it was great. Because it looked like two people struggling for an advantage. It looked like two people that were not trying to cooperate. They were just shoving each other around, trying to get the advantage on the other. Didn't have to look smooth or none of that stuff. I mean, it looked like they were really, putting some effort into that. And I appreciated them for it. I really did. Of course, Paola does her little hip shaking thing once they're free of each other, just to kind of taunt and antagonize Blaze. Blaze does a duck underneath and does one in return. And of course, the goat is like, "Oh yeah, okay, that's cute." Anyhow, they have words with each other, and then they go back into the lockup. It's very simple stuff, but it looks convincing. I almost feel like this is another one of those points where this kind of spot or segment in the match is almost wasted on this audience because they didn't look like they cared or knew what was going on, or there was no vested interest in this. But quite honestly, there probably shouldn't have been any vested interest in it. I don't know why or how you could. I mean, Mayfield just got there. They didn't really set her up as anything different or anything special. And then Blaze has lost every match that she's been in since she's been there. So the more I'm thinking about it, it's like, oh, well, why would the crowd be into it? But they went for a little while just with that spot. They just went back and forth with the clutching and holding on to the collar and elbow tie-up between the two of them. Just even turning it into a modified arm drag while still in the lockup, forcing it down onto the mat while still in the lockup. So all of that, it felt and looked like, whoa, okay, now they're trying to get some stuff done here. But that is where my compliments start to cease. I mean, I was fine with what they were doing, but for whatever reasons, Blaze, when she got free of the second lockup with Mayfield in the corner, she just inexplicably turned and started talking to his Abilene Maverick. Like, what? Why? It's like, what was this for? And because we can't see anything going on. I mean, you hear Dave McClain hollering about stuff, but still, she's not at ringside. She's at the commentating booth. Why are you turning towards her? And if this is the way that we were going to do it, then Maverick should have been at ringside. She should have been in the position of the manager where she can go and do something and distract her. And it looked like there's a legitimate distraction opposed to, I'm just turning around to yell at you just because you're there. And that's what it came off like. It just came off like she just turned around and started yelling at Abilene Maverick at the commentating booth because she was there, regardless of what Maverick said. I mean, she shouldn't be hearing her from the commentating booth anyway unless she's yelling at the top of her lungs. But that provided enough of the distraction, and then Paola came in and yanked her hair, and then that's where she got control of the match. Sent it to the corner, runs in with a charging forearm, snap mare, kick in the back, all that good stuff. She basically, at this point, is getting the showcase for who she is. I don't know what her little pin thing that she did after she did a drop kick on Blaze, because there was almost no part of her body that was on the shoulders. I'm not even. You have to go back and look at it. Like, it's body on body, but I was like, there's no way that pin would keep it down. The only saving grace that I like in her is that she looks, walks, talks, and seems arrogant. So the cover, regardless of whether I agree with it or not, I will admit this, regardless of whether I agree with it or not, that cover fits her. She is working for how Paola Mayfield should be working. Even when she's got the foot on her throat and she's waving to the audience and or camera, it looks good for her. Now, let's just get to the end of it, because all this time, up until Blaze is able to regain the advantage here, it's been all Mayfield, and up until she charges in and she catches the boots of Blaze. Blaze then takes control. She does some short arm clotheslines and sets Mayfield down. She's looking to get the win and go for the cover and all that good stuff. And then she gets the cover. She goes for the cover following. I gotta look at my notes now. She gets the cover following, a low drop kick right into the side and the ribs. She goes for it. Mayfield kicks out. And then, for a second time in the match, she just gets up, walks towards the side with the commentators, and starts talking to Maverick again. Now, at this point, Maverick's up on her feet, and keep in mind that David McClain has yelled at her of her being Abilene Maverick. You can't go in there. You don't have a license. Sit down, and all stuff like that. But what was she turning around for? Like, the match was going fine, and I was enjoying the match, but I do not understand this. Why was she turning around to go yell at Abilene Maverick, who's not even at ringside? And if this was supposed to be the finish, where she's going to be distracted for the loss, why wouldn't Maverick be at ringside? Hey. So anyhow, Blaze gets distracted. And I am saying distracted with very loose undertone. Because it's not like it seemed like Maverick did anything to warrant that distraction. And now I can't prove this. I don't know if this was edited down to where some other spot or something like that is missing. But when we come back to the ring, Mayfield is already standing up. She's not just standing up. She's got Blaze by the wrist, or at least Blaze has her by the wrist. So I can only assume that during the turn of the camera, she went over to Mayfield, picked her up, and walked her over to the ropes to yell at Maverick some more, which again makes no sense to me. Why was that in there? But as she's doing this, Paola just hits her with a German suplex, and that's it. 1, 2, 3. She basically beats her clean. Now, I'm sure somebody's going to be like, well, she was distracted, but that distraction came at Ashley Blaze's hands. She didn't get distracted because the heel manager distracted her. She just got distracted because she just had a drifting thought and walked off and just, like she had the attention span of a flea for some reason. I don't know what happened, but she just wandered off. I don't know why she couldn't remain focused on the match. It seems so ridiculous to me. And it started off really good. And I was loving how it started just because there was aggression. And for a fleeting moment, I thought, okay, maybe even if she loses, they'll get something out of it, and Blaze can, be elevated out of the loss, or it can lead off to something between the two of them in the future. Nope. None of that. Yes, there's almost no reason to come back to this. Blaze lost clean, like she lost clean to everybody. So, Ashley, I think she's talented. But I don't think WOW is going to be the place for her to get any traction on her wrestling career. I'm sorry, I just don't. The next segment they had was the commentators billboarding the show, talking about the remaining matches that are going to be there. The segment after that was one of my favorite teams, the Brat Pack. However, I am beginning to lose faith in Gianni and Rhythm. This show has beaten the faith out of me that they are ever going to do anything or get anywhere, much less the faction that they are part of. WOW has trained probably its audience and certainly me that they have no hope in getting to any sort of tag team contention or being any sort of main eventer because they just can't. I don't know. But in this particular case, given the team that they were up against, it was a no-brainer. And let me put it this way. The note that I had was if they cannot beat the random team or the random pairing of Tiki Charmorro and Brittney Bay, they need to just give it up. So here's the first thing that I noticed here. Zayn starts this addressing the ban of the Alliance. And it's like, okay, so what is this some sort of ongoing thing? Because they were banned, a week ago, or I can't remember specifically when that happened. At least about 2 weeks back during the Del Rey match. Yeah, that was about 2 episodes ago. And they were banned. Right then, right there on the spot. Because, David McClain can make those rules right then and right there, even though it doesn't exercise that very often. Unless, you did something to him personally, apparently. Because seemingly the only reason that he did it to them is because allegedly Gambino lied to him, because everybody else that cheats or beats somebody up after the match or cheats during the match or does something behind the referee's back or whatever is easily excusable, except for the Alliance. The Alliance just got the short end of the goddamn stick and apparently got on the wrong side of Dave McClain, who, according to, at least as it relates to them, is actually a boss. Everybody else, he's just a commentator, which is it's stupid, which is why I said he needs to just get out of the booth or do one or the other. I've talked about that ad nauseum. So, but the thing that really got me about this is that once Zayn brings it up, talks about the Bandit Alliance, McClain had the nerve on camera and on his show to be like, I did it because we want fair competition here in WoW. Like, seriously? You want fair competition here in WoW? Every heel team there cheats. Every top tier made it a regular weekly occurrence to beat people up after the match, just for no reason. It's not like they was involved in a feud. It's not like they did anything to them. It's not like they lost. They were trying to get their heat back. They just beat people up. So, the Fab Four cheat on a regular basis. Holly Swag advertises the fact that she's going to cheat. She walks out there with a rock in a sock, and they talk about it on camera to the audience. What do you mean you want fair competition in WoW? If that was true, everybody would be banned, or the sock would be banned, or there would be some sort of implication to it. This just comes off as him being biased towards the Alliance, quite honestly. Where is there supposed to be some field of fair play amongst these people? The only persons that have felt the brunt of, well, we got to level out the playing field has been the Alliance, quite honestly. I'm trying to think who else got that. And the only times that I can remember him making those kind of statements is it dealt with him directly. Sophia Lopez, when she we go back a couple of months, probably over a year now, when they was getting ready for the triple threat, Princess Aussie, Pink, and was it Tormenta? She was supposed to be next in line. The Pink leapfrogged her, and Lopez was like, I have a contract here, and he just like, this means nothing. And pretty much just looked at it, glanced it over for a second or two, gave it back to her, and just totally dismissed it. That was one. I mean, this situation here with the Alliance, you lied to me, so therefore you're punished for it. Then you got the situation with the firings. They bring it up to him right then and there. It's like, oh, well, okay, this person, you're fired. And then the disciplinary, you're fired. Even though we still haven't addressed the third person. I guess that person didn't exist, and we'll just, pretend that they vanished off into the ether. I don't know. But the point I'm making here is it doesn't seem, I'm not even going to say seems. There is no consistency as to what rules get laid down to who, when, and where. It just happens at random. I could go on about him not needing to be both the authority figure and the commentator because it is a conflict of interest, even if we're just talking about the interest in a kayfabe universe. It violates that. Now, I don't ever expect him to get up and leave. And no one's there that's going to make him do it. But it violates that. It always has, and it just continues to get worse. This is one of the worst examples of it. That and the fact that if you are a manager for whatever reasons, if you come to ringside, you might as well just go ahead and take your seat next to him and start yammering about something. Oh, anyhow. This match was unimportant. And let me just, I don't want to single that particular match out. I'm just going to say that this is a one-match show. Not because the matches are bad, because the matches don't have any weight to them beyond the main event match. Like, this match is fine, but come on, is Brittney Bay. Charmorro I like, but Charmorro's been, she's basically been slotted backwards back down to where she was when she started the company. So whatever gains that she had once upon a time, that's pretty much disappeared. Bay hasn't won anything. I'm really surprised. Why is she even with Tiki Charmorro anyway? Where's Spring Break 24/7? Because she's clearly cut out of the mold of Spring Break 24/7. So why is she with them? I mean, they ain't even mentioned each other. For that matter, where are they? So, anyhow. I still enjoy their work. They being Rhythm and Gianni. I still enjoy what they do in the ring. I still believe that they are a good functioning tag team, and probably the team that Charmorro and Bay more specific than Charmorro, probably needed in order to help them look good. There's a spot in the match where once Bay gets in, like BK Rhythm basically had to feed Brittney her arm so that she would do the armbar deal. Like, maybe it could have been a different angle because it was fairly obvious when Bay gives a low cross body to a seated BK. BK is able to get out of it, but when she turns and she's on her knees, she just lifts up her left arm. Just, unsolicited, and it wasn't grabbed. So she just lifts up her left arm. That's why I was like, she's just feeding this to Bay for her to do her deal, which was a roll up. So get into the I guess the meat of the match. Here we know that the Brat Pack, Rhythm and Gianni, are really very good at positioning themselves, and generally speaking, with the exception of a few times, their timing is pretty on point. It doesn't usually have a lot of space between, when they're doing something in the ring and trying to get position for the next person or whatever the move happens to be. They are usually very much on point with doing that. And they were on point doing it here. No complaints. It's just not a lot that's going on. I forgot to mention that Rhythm had her opening rap like she always does. I just wish that the raps had gotten her somewhere. Like at this point, I other than that, it's just her gimmick. I don't see any point in her continuing it. It's not getting her any heat. It's not helping them grow. It's not getting them over with the audience or anything of that nature. And probably with you having a audience that is selected, I'm sure some people bought some tickets, but apparently there's some people that's just asked to attend also. With the audience as it is, I don't see where the raps help them. It might be entertaining to hear from time to time when she comes out there, but I just don't see where it helps that team. No one's turning around pining to hear more from her. It's not having the same effect as it did with the Acclaimed. It's not having the same effect as it did with Cena years ago. It's not any other person that has done that gimmick. Those are like the two most notable. At one point in time, the Acclaimed were over. Now they've ruined that in AEW, but that's a review for another show. But you get the point here. If she's doing that, the ideal situation is that it would help them gain some momentum as a team. Man, getting back to the match, there was one of the spots I like was when Bay does a sunset flip over Gianni. Gianni gets out of it, and she nails her with a good clothesline. I mean, that thing was it just looked good. I'm not going to say she clobbered her with it, but it looked good when she just basically steamrolled her with a clothesline in the middle of the ring. And then she ran across and she popped Tiki. And they stayed in control. Does the does the baby faces, does the heels. I know I'd criticized or I said that Rhythm's elbow drop looked awkward at one point, but this one didn't. She gave a little wind up and brought that thing down into like the midsection of Bay. But to the point that I had in the beginning of this, there was no reason for the Brat Pack to lose this match. And there was no real angle or anything that was going into it or coming out of it. This is mostly built on talking about Gambino being banned or the Alliance being banned in general. McClain during the match bringing up that he saw Gambino talking to Lopez and that he was expecting to hear from them in the near future. So then I wrote, is Lopez a heel lawyer again? I know that they put out a casting call, and I hate that. But I know that they put out a casting call for another lawyer persona on the show. So there's no guarantee that it's going to be Sophia Lopez. But when he says that there, like, oh, I saw them in the hallway. It's like, all right, is she returning back to being the heel lawyer now? Or anyway. I also wrote down the Brat Pack are very good, but they will never gain ground / momentum in the grand scheme of WoW. As long as it's the way that it is, they're never going to gain any momentum there. As I stated at the beginning, I have just really, I feel bad for it, but I've somewhat given up on that because they can never get a significant win. Hey, over little random teams like this, sure. But nothing significant, which also goes back to when McClain was talking about the Alliance is looking to take over WoW. Like, well, how is that happening? They don't have any prominent matches, championships, wins. How? Anyway, I don't want to get off talking about the Alliance. Let me just get back to where the match was. So, Bay is able to make the tag out, and here comes Tiki. Tiki takes over on Gianni. And she does set her up for her move. The one that we saw that she kind of flubbed up on the last time, and she hits her 6-7-1. So we know that she could do it, and that only makes me feel worse about the fact that they left the screw up in the last match when she can clearly get the job done. And maybe if they had her reset the spot and try it again, it might have looked better. But that's neither here nor there. So she hits it. I don't know if I would have wanted the camera to be that close up on it when she did it, because it, is no fault of her own, but it does illustrate that it's not a super hard hit. But as she's doing that, then and she nails Gianni, BK Rhythm gets up on the apron and she's talking to or getting ready to talk to Tiki Charmorro. Now, keep in mind, this is her side of the ring. This is BK Rhythm's side of the ring. She didn't step into it. She didn't go all the way across. She didn't even grab Tiki's foot or anything along those lines. After Tiki hits the 6-7-1, she just climbs up on the apron and starts yelling at her. And yelling at her and basically where she's supposed to be. I mean, she's a couple of feet away from the corner, but she's still relatively close to her side. I bring that up to say this. Bay sees this and she gets down and runs around to where BK Rhythm is on the opposite side. Rhythm sees her coming and she takes the attempt to kick her to stop her from coming at her. Bay catches her foot and sweeps it out from underneath Rhythm. Rhythm goes down and Rhythm hits the floor. And then in the bottom of your screen, when that happens, you can see Bay is like talking to her on the ground. We don't know what she's saying, but she's clearly giving her lip. Meanwhile, on the inside of the ring, Charmorro's going after Gianni, but Gianni is ready. So when she comes and she is getting ready to do whatever it is that she was going to do, because she gives a little sound like it's over, Tiki does, Gianni pops up and she gives her, well, I don't know, it wouldn't be a code breaker necessarily, but she calls it, or they called it a shop till you drop, which is basically a jawbreaker using the knee. And much like the first match, this is a case of the heels going over clean, more or less. They cannot help that Bay got distracted and ran around to the other side to stop something before it took place. I didn't get it. It was like the same thing again. Like, we'll just have the babyface get dumbfounded and do something stupid, and then it'll cost the match. Why are the babyfaces portrayed as so idiotic? I mean, the dumb baby faces were on full display in this episode. Heels largely won on their own merit here. Paola didn't ask for Blaze to turn around and start talking to Maverick. She just did it. The Brat Pack didn't ask for Brittney Bay to run off from her position where she should be waiting for her partner or trying to help her out. She just did it. Yeah, does it make the Brat Pack look good? Sure. But I don't know what they're trying to get off of them, because they've been somewhat slotted in this role of non-growth. Like, even them joining the alliance hasn't done much for them. It's like we got this faction by name, but there's nothing that's happened from this. And then there's this band, so it didn't even feel like the faction. They didn't even get to come out with their own manager, much less the muscle of the group or the bodyguard or whatever you want to call Del Rey. So it didn't even feel like an alliance thing. It just felt like, okay, here's the Brat Pack again. We're just back to that. So I don't know. I have no idea. Moving on. The next segment, the commentators prep the audience for the next match, and that's Top Tier versus the Mighty Mites. And I wrote here, why is WOW still using the studio footage of Top Tier, ignoring / shunning Glitter? Why would they even shoot that in the first place? Isn't this supposed to be a beef between Top Tier internally? For what reason would they walk into a studio just to, like, all right, well, we're going to stand in front of you and not let you do a damn thing? I know somebody's like, well, it helps get the story across. Well, look, WOW has enough hills and hurdles to jump. They don't need to make this any worse for themselves. But that's what it feels like. It just feels like they just do stuff just to do stuff. And, I forgot one other thing. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, because you've heard it before, and she gave it to me again. Miss New Hire wrote down notes. I'm waving it right now for this entire show. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to read her notes because I don't want to get my stuff confused with hers. She has a very, very optimistic look of WOW, although there are times where she does not know who these people are, what they're doing, or why they're there. So take that with a grain of salt. So I am going to read now. I'm going to take this break from my review and give you hers. This is Miss New Hire. And is this in order? Let me make sure this is in order. All right, this is in order. The first match, Paola the Columbian Goat versus Ashley Blaze. It was a dramatic interest for Paola just for her to have a mediocre match and mediocre moves. I like both of their shiny outfits. Ashley Blaze started to make a comeback with her moves. Lackluster fight. Too much attention on VIP guest, a.k.a. the manager. Unfair fight. Paola the Goat won the match. Match 2, the Brat Pack versus Tiki, Charmorro, and Brittney Bay. Brittney Bay to start the match off was amazing. Brittney has very, very well moves. I think she phrased that wrong. I'm actually surprised Tiki was getting beat by Gianni until she tagged Brittney Bay back in. Brittney got the best of Gianni. Tiki came back in the ring and got a couple of moves on Gianni, but Gianni beat Tiki. Great match, great moves. Match 3. Top Tier versus the Mighty Mites. The Mighty Mites are off to a great start. Sugar has great moves. Candy Crush is getting thrown around the ring. Spice has even better moves. Coach couldn't stand a chance against her on her own or 1 versus 1. Top Tier does not have good moves. Listen, okay, let me just stop for a second. I know I explained it before, but look, she's writing very shorthanded because I know anybody that's walked in on this is like, this sounds very redundant. And not just redundant, but some of it might sound a little elementary. But so just bear with it. Like I said, she is new to watching pro wrestling as a whole. So everything is, it's just great. All great. This is just great from top to bottom. Okay, where did I leave off? Top Tier does not have good moves. They like to do team moves instead of one-on-ones. Candy Crush bit Sugar. That is not cool. It was not a fair fight, but Top Tier won like usual. Thank God they did not use the rock sock. Okay, so I'm going to stop again. You see what I mean? So some of the people on the show, she confuses for other people. For whatever reason, she cannot keep track of whomever is doing what. So she is clearly at this point confusing Top Tier. I don't know why. Don't ask. She's confusing Top Tier for the Fab Four. And the last match, match 4. Animal Instinct versus Miami Sweet Heat. Okay, yeah, no, I'm sorry. She had the other team in a different column. Animal Instinct versus Miami Sweet Heat versus Jesse Jones, Big Rig Betty. This match was incredibly confusing for me. I watched it 3 times and it's still so confusing for me. Sweet Heat cheats like usual. Some of Animal Instinct's moves made no sense at all. Jesse Jones and Big Rig Betty dominated the ring, and the win was absolutely beautiful to see. Great job, country gals. Yes, she also is not really aware of the name of the team. So there we have it. That's Miss New Hire's take on the things that have been going on in the show. I could just hear somebody like, who wrote that? That's what's playing in my head right now, the reaction of that being read. I'm sorry. It's just tickling me. You know what? It's Miller time. There we go. And that right there alone should tell you I'm an old man because I said it's Miller time. Okay. So we are going to rotate back to my review, or my portion of it, and we will pick up on the other half of the show. That half being Top Tier with Gloria Glitter versus the Mighty Mites. Before the match even started, and this isn't a bad thing, I just noticed that the Mites promo video, the same studio video, I'm referring to them as studio videos for the purposes of this podcast. When they're standing in either the black backdrop or the all white backdrop, or the black backdrop has like the neon / LED lights there, and then they have the white backdrop in there too, and they've intercut between that. When I'm talking about studio shoots, I'm talking about those. But the Mites, in their particular video, it hints at them having opposite personalities. And that's nothing wrong. There's nothing bad in that. what made me think about it is like it's never really addressed. It's another one of those things that is what is this supposed to be with them? Like, are they, with opposites that attract? Are we, are we kind of friendly with each other? Or, is Spice supposed to be this angry grump and not wanting to be a happy individual the way that Sugar is, or whatever the case? Because one of those clips shows like Spice almost forcing a smile on her face while Sugar's standing there smiling, genuinely and all that stuff. None of those things are wrong. It's just, it's never gone anywhere. It's never brought up. You never hear them talk. There's no backstage segment that reinforces it. It just is. So I don't know why these things are included in the intercuts when they walk in if it's never going to be brought up or anything done with it, or I don't know. Are they going to have some sort of vignettes where Sugar's trying to show her, hey, life is good, or not anything? Nothing has come from that. Conversely, Top Tier is the opposite, where their whole story is in their reshoot studio shots, I guess, with Glitter standing in the background, jumping around, trying to get camera time like an idiot. I mean, and it's I know I shouldn't apply this kind of logic to it. I know I shouldn't. But it's not as if Candy Crush and Coach Campanelli are a wall. Glitter could have literally taken 2 steps to the left or the right and she'd have been seen. Instead of being a moron and jumping in the background like, hey, guys, can you see me? And I say that having liked this team, or at least initially I did. Because initially I thought that, all right, well, maybe they will, they might rotate Fab 4 out and Top Tier will become the primary heel group for a while. But that ain't happening. It's like they just exist in their own little universes. And the story here is that they're apparently still snubbing Glitter, who comes out just as a corner person in this instance as they go into this tag team match. And before she's able to get up on the apron with the rest of them, the coach is like, no, you stay down there. So that's largely the angle that I guess the little idiot friend gets to get pushed off to the side while they go in there and they do the real work. So the Mites come out. We just talked about their intercut videos and whatnot. And this match I enjoyed, but I've thought very highly of the Mites. I wish that they got more stuff out of being there. I really think that they do a great job with almost everybody that they've been in except for their debut match where they just got the crap beat out of them. But, but I also guess that, the Mites, much like the Brat Pack, have no future in that company. They just are. But they did such good work here. It's one of those things where I could say that, I could see the logic in using them to try and get people who are not used to watching WoW or have not given WoW a chance as to how good the matches can be. The Mites will be up on the short list of people that you should utilize. As long as they have teams that are comparable to them that can work their style. And in fairness, now I don't know if this took them having a bunch of practice or not, but in fairness to Top Tier, both Crush and Campanelli did a good job with the Mites, or the Mites did a good job with them. Take your pick. And they were, pretty much all over the place. That's why I say, if they just had teams that they could really work and get something going with, but the Mites have not had any significant angles, feuds, segments or anything else. They're just there. Which reminds me, and I don't know if there had been a more appropriate comment by anybody as it related to WoW. I got a comment on one of the videos, and it was a comment built on the reasons WoW does what it does. And my response was, I don't know if I could say this any better myself. And that being the case, I'm going to use that comment right now because I want to read this to you. This comment comes from, and I'm going to try to pronounce, it's not a real name. This is a YouTube channel. The J Rock Freak. Hope I'm saying that right. I guess that's the only way you can, but it was about as concise summary as I've ever read. He wrote, and this comment is under the episode 119, Everything to Prove review, if you want to read it or respond or whatever. Also, by the way, Zentara has another full review that you can go through and read. She does great reviews on there that's written up pretty concisely. So if you are looking to interact with some of your fellow community members, then take a look at that. Okay, so back to the comment. He wrote, the problem with WoW is that it operates as if everyone is on the same level no matter how much they lose, so wrestlers can just decide they want to challenge for a title or want an opportunity because we are all WoW superheroes. And I could not argue any of that. Everybody is presented on the same level. Now, whether they actually are or not is a different issue, but I know what he's saying. Everybody, as far as like the presentation, when they take the beginning of this show, for instance, you'll have to go through Ashley Blaze. Now, in any other wrestling company, that would have been like the Midnight Express being challenged by the Mulkey brothers, or The Rock having to deal with the Brooklyn Brawler before he gets a championship match. It would have been like the equivalent of that, because, and that's no knock to Blaze, but Blaze has not won. She's not been positioned in terms of win, loss, and the results of her match as a top person. But yet and still, WoW features or presents her as a top person. So that comment that he wrote there, I 100% agree with. It seems to be the way that WoW does its business. Everybody is a star here. Everybody's on the same level until at least those persons lose, which, like this. The Mites are presented as being comparable to top tier or something along those lines, and they gave a pretty good match. I enjoyed watching the match, but there was never a doubt in my mind that the Mites were not going to succeed in beating them because they just haven't been positioned as such. If they had gotten it, I would have probably popped. But, they have never been presented like they're some sort of world beaters. They might win one or two. They're like the babyface version of the Brat Pack. They'll win against some random team here and there, but they certainly don't win often enough or any matches that are important enough to warrant them being positioned as a top tier. How many times have they had to lose to top tier? Speaking of people that got slotted into the tournaments twice, the Mites lost to them twice in the same tournament. Oh, no, let me not say that. I tell a lie. That was Exile. And I don't want to put them in any worse position than they were, so I apologize. That was wrong. I was remembering that incorrectly. But in any case, top tier was the team of choice in this particular instance. And I'm sure if I go back through my notes and go through it meticulously, I could probably find another match that they took on with the Mites. Probably some other 6th person that they just had to job out for, if I'm not, if I was taking a guess. But let's get to the end of the match, because that's the important part. Regardless to how good the moves were, and they were good, the head scissors, the snap mares, the rolling, the tumble rolls that the Mites were doing, and all that good stuff. It was good. I didn't mind Crush just taking a random bite out of Sugar's ear. I guess she's trying to show some aggression, or maybe she was channeling young Mike Tyson. I don't know. But she just decided that she wanted to take a nibble at her ear for whatever reason, so she did. And in full view of the camera, that I don't know if I'm not mad at it. No, I'm not mad that that happened, because I do, in most cases, go off of the premise that the heel doesn't have to necessarily cheat just because they are losing. Sometimes they just do it because they can. They're doing the bully thing. So I'm fine with them doing it. I just would have preferred if it was saved for a match that there was some emphasis on, or some sort of grudge, or something like that. As it is here, is just kind of I'm just going to do it just because. Again, let me repeat, not mad at it. I just wish that it was saved for something else. So at the end of the match, and I would suggest, if you haven't seen it, you should this might be one that you would enjoy. You can look at this one and enjoy it for what it is. At the end of the match, and this is another one of those cases where it looks like the heels are just won basically on their own merit. Spice hits what the Big Show used to call it, like the final curtain, when he hooks the leg over across the throat and then drops it, and goes for a pin on Campanelli. Crush comes in to stop it. Sugar comes in to stop Crush, but then Crush cuts her off and just basically tosses her out of the ring. Tosses her towards the turnbuckle post, and we don't see it. I've grown to hate this aerial shot that they do. It's disjointing and distracting. I liked it every once in a while, but it's like they go out of their way to make sure that you see that we got a crane shot. So Crush shoots Sugar, make sure I'm saying that right, into the turnbuckle post. We do not see the impact. We just are to know that she got thrown out of the ring. Referee's not paying any attention to what's going on in the ring, because she's looking at Sugar like, ooh, you okay down there? Meanwhile, Crush goes to attack Spice, who's now stuck in there with both Campanelli and Crush. And they do a new finisher, at least as far as I'm aware, side Russian leg sweep with a punch in the mouth combo or a clothesline. I can't tell because of the camera angle. I mean, Candy Crush wound up her fist as if it were a punch, but the way that it came across, it looked like it might have been a clothesline. But either way, it was the tandem move that finished the match, and Top Tier wins. I know you're all shocked and surprised, but yeah, Top Tier wins the match. Again, for the third time in the show, the heels basically win this clean. Glitter didn't help them. There was no pulling of the tights or foreign objects or anything like that. The closest thing that we got to it is the biting of the ear. That didn't gain any advantages though. It was probably painful. Again, we look at it for kayfabe purposes. But aside from that, no, it didn't do anything there. It just they won. That's all we can say. They won. Gloria Glitter was a non-factor the entire match. He just stood out there and cheered them on. And I wrote, how is this supposed to teach Glitter a lesson? I mean, I get that they're doing this snub thing, but I don't know what was to be gained other than maybe we're trying to teach you how it's done. I don't know. But wouldn't it be a better lesson if Coach or Crush taught her how it was done in a singles match? It's not like she's lost in a tag one. I mean, she's lost, but that wasn't the catalyst of this issue. The issue was that Glitter went out on her own. So wouldn't the lesson be shown that Campanelli or Crush, we can do it if we had wrestled by ourselves or, something like that. And I just want to rotate back to a comment that they made, the commentators, somewhere in this match, that there was a comparison to the Freebirds. McLean compared Top Tier to the Freebirds. No. And I'm going to explain why. Because I know it would come off like, well, it's a 3-person team. The Freebirds were a three-person team. And as a surface level thing, yes, that would be the comparison point if you started and stopped with that. But taking experience level and all that other stuff aside, or money draw and all that, just get rid of that. Part of the purpose of their 3-person team, because the catalyst for this being brought up was McLean talking about, well, they can wrestle any 2 of the 3. Well, they've always been that way. But there's no psychology attached to that, meaning the reason that we can have any 2 of the 3 was specifically for the championships, not just a match. Any 2 of the 3 of us can defend the titles, which in turn means that you can never be fully prepared for which 2 of us you get. That's the psychology of that. This is not that. They can't have 2 people defend the trio's titles, or the vanity belts as I refer to them. They can't have 2 of them doing that. They have to be all 3. Now, did the Freebirds have a 3-person title run? Yes. But it wasn't dependent on them switching and swapping members. It's all 3. It's the tag belts where they got to utilize that. That's where the Freebird rule comes from. And it's been done that way amongst multiple teams. Demolition, Axe Smash, and then they added Crush when they went back heel. And that was the whole crux of what they were talking about. Well, which one of us are you getting? Axe and Smash, Axe and Crush, Smash and Crush, or Smash and Axe. They tried to make the angle built around the teams always had to keep guessing. You can go back and look at that SummerSlam when they finally lost. It was the Hart Foundation overcoming. They had to get help to do it, but they had to overcome. You can put the same thing on the NWO. Any 2 of us can defend the titles because Nash and Hall did do that on occasion. They were like, all right, Savage is going to defend for me or defend in my spot. That logic has always been wrapped around the championship. So this comparison to the Freebirds is grossly wrong. I understood what he was trying to do, but it doesn't work here. Because they should have had just the tag team champion. I seem to recall myself saying this. They should have just had the tag team championships and been the 3-person team that would rotate amongst members. And then you have something for the babyfaces to try and overcome. But as it is, you got this. But they aren't close to the Freebirds. I'm sorry, they're not. And I'm not trying to disparage Top Tier. They honestly could have been used differently. Those trios belts are worthless titles. They're only there out of vanity. If they were going to do anything useful with them, they should have gotten the tag team championships and then applied the Freebird rule. And then this statement would be true. But it isn't, so they're not. Now, and McClain also expressed that top tier, no one is in line to beat top tier except for themselves. So, like, this is terrible. Somebody had made that statement some time ago. Is like, it just seems like the heel factions can't be beaten. They just have to implode from within. And that's what it's starting to feel like. It just feels like, well, they're not going to get beaten, so they just have to implode from within. Who does that help? Who does that get over? I don't even know if it helps top tier. If they implode from within right now, it's like, what did that do for them? They had like a mediocre run against a bunch of teams that were just thrown together. So what was the point of that? And then there's no babyface team that'll overcome it, at least not yet. Where are they going with it? And I don't know. And Nigel Zane saying that one of them did a knee lift. I think it was Campanelli. But he was like, there's a Michael Hayes style knee lift. I don't ever remember Michael Hayes being known for a knee lift. I'm sorry to disagree with commentator, on the show, but when was he ever noted for that? Like Mr. Wrestling 2 was noted for a knee lift. Jake Roberts for a little while before he started using the DDT, and even after that, it was like a setup. He was noted for a knee lift. When was Michael Hayes noted? I don't recall that. I know he was noted for a couple of things. He's noted for being a good talker, noted for the moonwalk, noted for having a strong punch, noted for the DDT, but I don't recall a knee lift. I just don't. I'm not saying he didn't do it. It just, when people think Michael Hayes, I don't know if that's the thing that you would think of, or any. If it ain't in the top 2, I'm not even sure if it would be in the top 5 or top 10 of things that you would think about when you think about him. But whatever. The closing statement on that is, this is every reason that I insisted they should have just been a tag team instead of doing the 3-person deal, because it is a pointless waste of time to have this 3-person team and these belts. If they were looking to do anything worthwhile with top tier or the tag team championships in general, they will fold up these trios titles, because it ain't doing anything for anybody. And then they will focus them being top tier into the tag team division. Make that division strong rather than diluting it, splitting it off. Moving on. Next segment is the video package for the upcoming triple threat match. This was good. I felt like it was well done. Good job on the editors. And it's good to have a different voiceover person aside from David McClain. That alone, I was like, okay, good. They brought the voiceover guy back, because I think he did one already. And when this goes through, they're cutting in promos. Big Rigs and Bourbon and Miami Sweet Heat both give good promos. And it felt, either by words that they said, by the delivery, or a combination of the two, that there was not just a desire to win, but the desire to beat the other person up. Big Rigs and Bourbon, they borrow the Steve Austin line, we're going to stomp a mud hole in you and walk it dry. Miami Sweet Heat, Lori specifically was carrying on, in her fashion and talking about both teams as they should. And I like that it wasn't necessarily centered towards one or the other. It's centered towards both, or aimed at both. But my downside, and I'm not even going to say that is their fault, because I don't know how much of it they shot. So I cannot say that this is somehow the fault of Animal Instinct. But I will say, whether it was a case of their promo being cut down or a case of they did not deliver anything else other than that. Their promo was not good. I mean, it was about as basic as it can get. I ain't saying that she delivered it badly, but it was just like a one-note promo. Tonight, we'll walk away the tag team champions. And that was it. I was like, what? Why? I have heard that Collins is a good promo. This did not help me believe that she's a good promo. And I am going to reiterate that I don't know whether that's her fault or not. WoW has illustrated that they can have somebody cut a promo and they'll just chop it down. But in this case, however it occurred, it didn't give the same kind of weight or gravitas to it that their two contemporary teams did. Both of them got to say something. I mean, even if it was a short 30-second spurt, they got to say something and they got to get it across as, this is, kind of our issue, or we're going to walk in the Champions League, that type of thing. Here it is just like they turned into what I normally expect them to turn into, two cartoon villains. Tonight, we'll walk away the tag team champions, and then they I was like, fortunately for them, and I'm going to say this is the best I can get. Fortunately for them, the bulk of the match that they participated in wiped this promo out, or wiped this video package out. So it wasn't a good showing of promo by Animal Instinct. Collins has a good delivery, but she had no material. There was no content. It didn't even feel like she had a gripe. She just was, we'll win. And then we moved on. The next segment is not anything that affects the show, but I just feel like I have to bring it up because why in the hell are they still running Christmas Verizon spots? I wrote it doesn't affect the flow of the show, but why are these still airing? For what reason is this still going on? Shouldn't they have been pulled by now, or Verizon should give you some new spots to run in there? Once you get past New Year's, Christmas spots should be pulled. But maybe they didn't have the time, so I'm not going to overly criticize them for it. And like I said, it does not affect the flow of the show. I just bring it up because I'm in there and I'm seeing it, and I see that these commercials are wrapped into their show. They're the internal spots that WoW sells. So why? Why, dude? Why? Next segment, they're promoting for the Battle Royal. I wrote, it's about time. I'm tired of seeing them talk about the qualifying for the Battle Royal and the thing that everybody is talking about and everybody's waiting and it's on the lips of every fan in the world and blah, 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 blah. Just get this goddamn Battle Royal over with so we can get a champion and move on. And then we get to the main event. The triple threat match for the tag team championships. Animal Instinct, Miami Sweet Heat, and Big Rigs and Bourbon. So let's begin with the visual of the match. I can't get past. I forgot there was one thing I had to say about the opening of because I just found this funny. When Animal Instinct comes out to ringside and Jinx gets it, and let me say something about this bullwhip. I am not a fan, and I've never been a fan of carrying around a gimmick that you know full well that you will never, ever use. It was like when Dagger was on the show and she was walking in there with like swords and sharp knives. I was like, that's never going to get used. And you can't even begin to use that as a heel gimmick to win a match or something like that. So it is nothing more than a prop. That's what this whip is. It is nothing more than a prop. I publicly suggested, I don't know if Jinx listens to it or information got back to her. I publicly suggested that she needs to go and watch some Dutch Mantel matches or promos. And you need to see all of them where he has Shoe Baby out. And maybe you can be inspired on how to work that into your match or work it into the promo or something along those lines to where that the whip is not just there for show. At least be able to threaten somebody with it or something. But I brought this up and I came back around to it because as she gets in the ring and she starts cracking the whip, McLean starts, "Ooh, I love the sound of the whip." And I was like, all right, I guess we know McLean's kink now. So so that might explain why Katarina Jinx is on the show in the first place. Hey, why don't you wear these tight dominatrix outfit and this bullwhip? No, this is the dominatrix. You're a cat. Yeah, that's it. You're a cat. I know you don't have whiskers or fur or anything like that, but yeah, just go with it. Oh, boy. Anyway. All right, I gotta get past that. All right, so anyhow, at least this match felt big. The cartoon characters aside of Goldie Collins and Katarina Jinx, and anybody that's listening to this knows I am not the biggest fan of the gimmick of Animal Instinct. And I will specify the gimmick of Animal Instinct because it just doesn't seem to fit anymore. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Collins doesn't come out with a dog, and Jinx is, at first sight, other than the eye, probably not going to remind anybody of a cat. She has to actively speak and act like a cat, which looks stupid and ridiculous. Just get them out of that. Let them evolve away from these cartoon gimmicks and let them be wrestlers. But I have always advocated in cases like this, every once in a while, you need the big match feel. And this is maybe as close to the big match feel within WoW that I've heard or seen in a while. They don't get it very often. And I'm being generous to say very often, if they have ever had it at all. But because Miami Sweet Heat comes out with Lana Starr, they look like stars. They look like somebody. Animal Instinct, for everything that I can say about them, they looked the part. They looked like, like stars. And once the bell rang, they started to straighten up. And then you got Big Rigs and Bourbon. And other than the use of the tie-in videos, and I'm talking about the portions of it where they were clipped out from things that they were doing before they got together as a team. Like Big Rig getting out the truck and Jones in Arkansas, Kentucky, wherever, with the shotgun. Outside of those, when you just had them in the studio with the belts and they got the same outfits on and, and they look like a tag team, that part should definitely stay in because they look like a team. The other two things, the getting out of the truck, the shotgun, I could have done without that. It didn't add anything to it. We see them together. We see them with the belts. They look good with the belts. Stick with that. Because you're selling them as a unit, not separately. So when they come out, they are still doing the deal with Tracy Smothers. They clearly are still giving homage to Smothers and part of his FBI gimmick from ECW. It's kind of like what I brought up with them. What was that, the last time? They are Smothers' twisted sisters in everything but the name. It's, you know, for you old heads out there, it's kind of like looking at Red Sonja. And for you young ones, you might have to look it up. Around that time, Arnold Schwarzenegger had done Conan the Barbarian. And then the production company wanted to do Red Sonja, which is like a companion movie. And apparently Schwarzenegger agreed to be in it, but he wasn't meant to be a major star. But since it was produced by the same company, and I can't remember why they didn't bother using the name, but since it was produced by the same company, he was Conan the Barbarian in that movie in everything but the name. The hair, the sword, his mannerisms, all of that. It was Conan and everything but the name. That's the same vibe I get with these two. They're Smothers Twisted Sisters in everything but the name. Now, one note that I had when this started up and McClane was going on about it, he says he was confused as to how they were to start and interact. And I wrote, the matchmaker isn't aware of the rules. How is this even possible? He's the matchmaker. And we all know he's the matchmaker. It's not like it's a secret. Why would he not be aware of the rules? That part didn't make any sense to me. And then after that, later on in the match, he goes into a full-on explanation about, well, they have to do this, and they don't have to beat so-and-so when they're in the ring. They could just do this and that and the other. I was like, I thought you didn't understand this. Why now are you going into full expert mode on what happens and what doesn't? So I just had to bypass that. There should be no logical reason, unless somebody in WoW's management or bookkeeping or matchmaking is going to justify it to me somehow. Feel free to leave your comment below if you can justify it. Why he is unable to start off knowing what it is. If he booked the match, he booked the match. He is responsible for this match taking place in the first place. How is he not aware of how it's supposed to start? Or his rules? Anyhow, without going through a blow-by-blow, no, this match wasn't confusing as my Miss New Hire coworker was kind of leading anybody that listened to believe. It followed every bit of what a triple threat match was. And I like that they set it up in such a way that everybody had a legitimate beef and or gripe with the next person. So it wasn't like Animal Instinct and Miami Sweet Heat, for instance, were friends in this equation because we're both heels. Both teams wanted to win. And any cooperation thereof was completely incidental or, whatever the case may be. So when the match begins, and I really, really, really grown to dislike this aerial shot. When the match begins, they start off with Miami Sweet Heat, both jumping Big Rig Betty, Animal Instinct, jumping Jesse Jones. And the heels, even though Betty was holding her own more so than Jones, the heels, both sides, got the advantage of them at, some point. And were able to clear the rings of the baby faces. Then Animal Instinct got the Miami Sweet Heat got control of the baby, or Big Rig Betty, I should say. Animal Instinct comes in and they attack Miami Sweet Heat. This leaves Lori in the ring with both members of Animal Instinct, which I guess she was the designated hit because she was doing most of the bumping around in this particular thing for her respective team. She gets hooked up in not Animal Instinct specifically, Katarina Jinx's submission over the top rope, although Zane did mention that you cannot be submitted while, being wrapped up in the ropes. But as she does that, Lana Starr comes around and she gives a smack in the stomach to make her her being Katarina Jinx let go. Although I have to point out, it looks like there was a little bit of confusion as to which arm or how or she was supposed to apply it. It looked like it took a little while for Jinx to find her rhythm or footing or whatever the case may be to hook that thing in. But as she is cut loose, for lack of a better term, from that submission, immediately Collins is right there to intercept Lori, and she goes with a suplex. And it's a beautiful looking suplex. I can give her credit where it's due. She goes for the cover. Lindsay comes in to save her sister. I will try not to go through every single blow by blow and point in the match. But I thought all parties here did well with each other. I didn't necessarily like certain parts of the match. But by and large, I was, it's like 80-20. Most of this I'm perfectly good with. Even with Sweet Heat beating up on Animal Instinct and Animal Instinct beating up on them. It goes back to everybody has issue with everybody. There's no real friendship to be displayed here. Collins, for her team, looked like she took a good chunk of the face smashes and bumps and whatnot, and Lindsay just pretty much rammed her head one turnbuckle after the other in one corner. Then she popped Jinx. Lana Starr is, doing what Lana Starr should do. As we noted, she went and saved Lord from being, well, she wasn't going to tap out, but she saved her from being maybe overly hurt. But that nuance point that I like is that she did the damage and she ran. She didn't stay over there. She did the heel thing. She did the damage and she ran. And I was like, all right. It's the little things, and I love it. And then one of the other little things is seeing Jones come in to save Collins from being pinned. Why? Because she has to. Not because she likes her, but because if Collins goes down, then they lose the titles also. So that came into play a couple of times. We heard McClain explaining it. Like I said, he started off not knowing how the rules work, but then suddenly became an expert. So they move on. What other important portions of this match were there? Because I would really suggest you watch it. There's no way I can really give you a full-on step-by-step. If you hadn't seen it, you should see it. There's a spot where Jinx has, which one was it, Lori? She has her in like a submission hole. And Lori is screaming for her sister, Lindsay. And I'm looking at that. It's like, this is what should be happening. She should be yelling for her sister. She should be trying to get some help. So I was very, very pleased in that through most of this, the small parts that help make the overall narrative work were being utilized, even down to something like that. Because she could have just stayed in there yelling and screaming, but she is in a move is like a variation of STF. I mean, it's not full on. It's like a leg lock and not a full crossface, but almost like a camel clutch leg lock combination. And yeah, she could have stayed there yelling and screaming about that, but no, she's just like, I need you to get me out of this. But who comes to the rescue but Jesse Jones? For the same reasons that she rescued or tried to rescue Collins earlier. Because if she goes down, we lose the titles anyway. There's a part in here where Lindsay hurls herself into the ring to save her sister. So they had a lot of good stuff that was going on in the course of this match. Where it started to lose it for me, and I guess I should point out that Jones does the old self-tagging thing, because when she does the save, she picks Jinx up, walks her to her corner, slaps her hand for her, and tags herself in. Lori looked like at some point in the match she tagged, but it wasn't what she meant to do. Like she forgot. She gave Collins like a little shove and like a little chest check, but then it counted as a tag. So she got to come in, and when Lori walks over to her sister, she's like, it looks like this. Like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to tag. That type of thing. But the other spots that needed to be discussed here was I did not like this particular spot. The partners tag off to each other. Not that the spot itself was bad, because here's the saving grace for that spot that he did. If it were Big Rig Betty that tagged off to Katarina Jinx, I can't believe I'm doing her full name because I don't like when they just full name it. But if it was Big Rig Betty that tagged off to Jinx, it would have made little sense. In this case, it's Jinx that tags her. So I can kind of go with the idea that they may have walked into this thing with the plan of, well, if we just tag ourselves, we can go and pin the other one, and then we'll get the win. That's where the good idea stopped. I was willing to go with that. The animal commands in the middle of the ring was a bit much. That part I was like, no. So Jinx tags herself in. They square off as Collins tells Betty, all right, get out of the ring. And they look at each other with intensity and all that stuff. And I've seen this spot a number of times, and we all know it never works to where they're going to sit up there and fight each other. It almost always does the same thing. Lay down and let me pin you. But in this case, the reason why I didn't like it was because the animal commands, like, sit, lay down. Because that's about as big of a tell-all as you can get. I know that they're trying to work their gimmick in there somehow, but please. They were doing so well up until this point. Why would you turn around and bog down the good stuff that you were doing by doing stupid cartoon stuff? So they get in, and that's what Collins does. She's like, sit. And then Jinx, like a trained cat or dog, she scoots down in the middle of the ring. And all four are watching this. Big Rigs and Bourbon and Miami Sweet Heat, they're watching her do this. And then Collins is like, lay down. And then she tries to get on her real quick and get the cover, which was a asinine plan, especially if I'm going to sit there and yell it and announce it. So they both get, both teams run in, they stop, and then that's the cue for the big cluster at the end of the match. They being both members, saved the pinfall from Animal Instinct just stealing one. And that's when we get the old everybody's got to hit their move spot. And everybody did. It was one thing after another. The sequence pretty much went like this. Short arm clothesline, some people call it a ripcord clothesline, with Big Rig to Lori Colson. Lindsay then comes in and gives a German suplex to Big Rig, which flattens her. She turns around after celebrating for a bit and gets caught with a nice clothesline from the top rope by Goldie Collins. She then celebrates also. Pump kick by Jesse Jones to Goldie Collins. Puts her down. Then we get a spin heel kick from Katarina Jinx to Jesse Jones, which I really wish that they had not have flipped the camera shot, because it shows you that it just did not come anywhere near her head and only caught her feet. And if Jesse hadn't stopped it, it probably wouldn't have caught her in the head in the first place. But so yeah, I really wish that they had not used that angle. But spin heel kick by Jinx to Jones, a spinning clothesline by Lori to Jinx, and then we finish off where we started in the first place. It's Big Rig and it's Lori, and Big Rig catches Lori with a stunner, and surprise, surprise, of all things, Lori eats the fall for this tag match, which is not something I expected in the least. If anything, I mean, you heard me before if you listened to it. I thought that, man, this sounds like a good opening for Miami Sweet Heat to get it for the 5th time and not have to beat the baby faces in order to do it. So, surprising, but a pleasant surprise all the same. Now, I still maintain and still hold on to the idea that they will probably get those championships back at some point in time. Don't know when, don't know how, don't know when or where. But it would not shock me in the least to see that they would turn it around and, yay, we got the belts back. But in this particular instance, the baby faces go over. In the heel factory, that is why I was shocked that they did it. So I guess they will continue to hold off the challenges of whomever for the foreseeable future. The summary of this entire episode is pretty much all the little notes that I gave you as I went, but just to kind of collect that. The babyfaces were in full stupidity mode this entire episode. The heels won largely on the merit of their own work. I mean, every once in a while you got some, but there wasn't a great deal of cheating overall in this. Don't know if Sophia Lopez is returning as a heel attorney. It was brought up, but we didn't see anything like that. I don't expect to see anything because, that's just how WoW is. In the first match, McLean talks about Mayfield and that she should have gone after Blaze's knee. It's heel advice, even though it's technically like not cheating. Now keep in mind this is earlier when he was like he was surprised that she didn't go after the knee, and then Maverick's like, oh, we don't need to do that. That is not, she's not a cheater. And he's like, that's just smart wrestling. That's just smart wrestling. Boy. Granted, like I said, technically it's not cheating, but granted, there's a difference, and somebody told me this when I was young. This is the early sports years. And it was like, there's a difference between being cheap and cheating. Running out the clock is a cheap thing to do. When you got the lead and you just, I got 30 seconds of the clock and you're just doing stuff just to keep it. You're ahead by a point, let's say. Well, I'm just going to run out of the clock so, they can't get it. Now, that's cheap, but it's within the rules. I'm oversimplifying, but you get what I'm saying. It would be cheap for her to do that, but cheap works for heels too. And he should not be encouraging that. That's why I say I don't never know which direction he's going, because it's like he at times wants to just be contrary. Like if the babyface is doing one thing, he'll say the opposite. And if the heels are, well, I don't need to do that. Well, you should. So I don't know. I don't know. It should have been labeled more of a gutsy move for Blaze to even participate rather than, well, she should just go after the knee. The Mites. I like the Mites. They were excellent in their match. I wish they had a better win-loss record. And as top tier, are they creating another finisher? Like, no one can establish a finisher in a while. Or very few people can. They can get one and then they'll just move on and become something else like the following week, or it won't have the same effect. I don't get that. Especially when you go, I don't want to say out of your way to establish it, but for a lot of them, they establish these finishers, or at least one or two, and then within a week or so, it means nothing. Case in point, the last time we saw the Classmaster, that was the previous episode, matter of fact. It was episode 120. By my count, it was 316 for them. The Classmaster for the weeks leading into that, I don't remember if I brought it up at the time, but the Classmaster leading into that episode had been using the big boot as a finisher. She had been finishing matches with that thing. And then she hits Tormenta in it. Not only did it not do anything for the match, but the commentators barely mentioned it. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like, oh my God, Tormenta just kicked out of the big boot. She might win this thing. None of that happened. It was just another move amongst all the moves. So I never get the idea that they establish anything. It just seems to just occur. And then they move on. But that was the full review of this episode. And I understand because, I'm sure looking at my calendar where this is going, when I'm doing this and when this will possibly be uploaded. That by the time you hear me talking about this, most of these things, if not 1 or 2 episodes, would have already passed. So I can't really speak in future tense for, or I guess that give my opinions about, because you probably likely would have seen the upcoming episode, the upcoming match, which will feature the Battle Royal. But just because I would like to just take a look at it in the preview thing, because I haven't read it yet, because, hey, I am all out of whack in terms of time. so, like I said, as I'm recording this, by the time it's uploaded and heard, you probably would have already seen what I'm talking about at this moment. So, but I haven't seen it. I'm lost in space. So I'm going to read this, knowing full well that you probably already know the results. But I want to check it out just because I haven't done it yet. So the next episode is going to be episode 318, a historic Wild Battle Royal. It's about goddamn time. And what they have written here is the qualifying matches are over, and 12 competitors, the Classmaster, Genesis, Reina Del Rey, Penelope Pink, Holly Swag, Paola, the Columbian Goat, Xena Phoenix, Chantilly Chella, Holiday, Tormenta, Princess Aussie, and Santana Garrett are finally ready to compete in the over-the-top rope battle royal for the Wild World Championship vacated by the Beast, who will be the last woman standing and the new Wild World Champion. Also in action, Scout Parker and Sprout Greens take on the Dojo Defenders, Kara Kai and Tara Strike. Miranda Mirage, accompanied by Siren the Voodoo Doll, faces Pep Riley, and Veronica Varoom challenges Kalaki the Island Girl. It sounds like 3 other non-consequential matches that are there just to be there. The environmentalists aren't doing anything, and they're kind of lost in the shuffle, as are the Dojo Defenders, so there's no angle there. Mirage and Pep Riley, that definitely doesn't have anything going. I mean, and Mirage, why are they even together? Mirage and Siren the Voodoo Doll. I know they tried to make some sort of explanation out of it previously, but for what reason would they be together? I mean, you got a stage show magician and a New Orleans voodoo queen. What about that is connective tissue? Beyond the fact that one pretends to have magic and the other one allegedly does. And it's with Pep Riley, so I'm sure Mirage is going to go over because Pep Riley didn't win anything. Varoom and Kalaki, God, who knows? I would guess Veronica Varoom. That would be my guess. Because the Island Girl, the only time that she's got a win on her side was, what was that? The match where they cheated for her in the 6 woman. Outside of that, she hadn't done much of anything. And I would assume if they had any plans for the environmentalists that this should be a win for them. They just got there. They just arrived. But let me not fool myself into thinking that Wild wouldn't do something dumb like that, like just have them turn around and lose. I'm going to say the environmentalists. I'm going to say them. But, it wouldn't be shocking because, like I said, most of these come off as non-consequential. And anytime Wild does anything non-consequential, they just take it any kind of goddamn way they want to. And I don't know who's winning the Battle Royal. I haven't looked at the results. So there we have it. That is what is going on. That is what's happening. That is their preview. And hopefully it'll be a reasonable episode. And on that note, as I prepare to do my next one following watching this thing, please go and visit, I'm going to do the abbreviated version. Please go visit our website, WPNWrestling.com. Why go to the website? Because it's got everything that goes on here. Everything. All the podcast episodes, they drop there. All the videos that get shot, they go there. And, of course, there's the archives of said videos that go back to 2013. Gosh. Over 10 years. Whew. Anyway, but it goes all the way back to that. Featuring a lot of names and talents that have moved on and gone to bigger and better or greener pastures on national television amongst several promotions, including AEW and AEW's offshoot of Ring of Honor and TNA, WWE in some cases, MLW and a few things in between. And, of course, there's always the girls that went to WoW. Never mind the fact that, and I'd never really boast about this, but I'm going to do it today, that I am going to go down and say right now that we had the probably the largest, most extensive, in-depth set of interviews to WoW talent across the board. I'm going to go ahead and make that claim until somebody shows me something different. I've seen other interviews, and I've seen other people have some, pretty reasonable ones, good ones. But I don't know if they've gone as quite as in-depth as what we've produced here. Not for nothing, not taking anything away from them, but I just don't think so. I mean, we got interviews that go with people for an hour and a half, 2 hours or whatnot, with people that were there from the start, people that came back, people that were in Generation 2 and 3 of WoW. I haven't talked to anybody on air for this incarnation of it. Maybe I need to get back to that. Maybe I need to try. But I might do that just to see what kind of results I get. I'll see if anybody be like, hell no, I'm not getting on that show. As bad as you talking about us, screw you. That'd be hilarious. Even for me. But anyhow, we will finish that up. I want to thank everyone for your time and your effort of listening to this and indulging me as I give my personal opinions and review of WoW's episodes from top to bottom. And we still got more to go. Still more to go. Hopefully they don't run me off before then. And on that note, I finish by saying that this is Mr. Green saying that this is Mr. Green saying so long, and we will see you on the next go-round. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the WPN's Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. If you have questions or comments, please contact us via our Facebook or our YouTube channel at the Women's Pro Wrestling Network. If you're new to the WPN, feel free to subscribe to our channel and like our page. We appreciate your support. Thank you again for listening.